Professor Biju Varkkey and to the other dignitaries. Today is a very special day for us at Organic BPS. We are having the 75th edition of our monthly leadership residency Mimamsa and is celebrating our 22nd anniversary. It's a great privilege for the entire team at Organic to be among all of you on this happy occasion. Let's begin the program with an invocation. Please watch the video. Organic BPS has come a long way since its humble origin in December 1999, thanks to the vision and sincere efforts of our beloved founder, Dilip Narayanan, a committed conservationist and an advocate of sustainability. He envisions creating a better world through building purpose-driven brands. As a postgraduate in management, he champions the philosophy of doing well by doing good through his work. He has pursued MDP programs from Harvard Business School and Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad. I invite Mr. Dilip Narayanan, Managing Director of Organic BPS, for the introductory remarks.
Respected Chief Guest, Professor Biju Varkkey, distinguished dignitaries, and my dear friends, a warm good evening. At the outset, let me welcome each one of you to this beautiful evening of learning. And a big shout out to all those who are watching us on our social handles. Henry Ford once said, anyone who stops learning is old, whether at 20 or 80. Anyone who keeps learning stays young. At Organic BPS, we all are perpetual students. Therefore, from the very early days, we have been giving strategic thrust to the learning and development of our team members. Mimamsa, our monthly leadership residency program, has been a continuing initiative in this regard. As Mimamsa gets into its 75th edition, there is a sense of satisfaction, pride, and happiness. I sincerely thank all the luminary speakers of the past 74 editions who took time of their schedules to share their valuable insights with us. Right from IPS officers to judicial officers, movie directors to academicians, CEOs to politicians, they were literally from different walks of life. Today, we have an exceptional guest as the 75th speaker of Mimamsa, a thought leader and a brilliant academician who has done path-breaking work in the organizational learning and talent development space. Let me extend a hearty welcome to the distinguished professor at IIM Ahmedabad and board member of many listed companies, Professor Biju Varkkey. Welcome, sir. Sri Venugopal P. Govind inaugurated Mimamsa many years ago at Gokulam Park. He has been a constant source of encouragement to all of us at Organic, and I take pleasure in welcoming him today on its 75th edition. We were consistent in organizing this program every month, despite the lockdown. VCG sir, hearty welcome. As we celebrate our 22nd birthday today, it's a time of reassurance for all of us to reaffirm the trust reposed in us by our clients. Our first client in 1999 still continues to be an active client today. He is in the room. Preserving a long-lasting relationship with our stakeholders is an integral part of our DNA. So many leaders from our client organizations are here today. I join our entire team in welcoming our dear clients to this program. I consider myself very lucky to have received immense support from our eminent advisory board members. All of them are present here. Dedicated colleagues, friends from the media, well-wishers, and my family. I am so happy to welcome them to this event. Friends, the pandemic has really changed the expectations of society and consumers on the responsibility and role of businesses and brands. The profit maximization theory of Milton Friedman will no longer hold good in this new normal. The economic world is moving towards conscious capitalism or stakeholder capitalism. Some people call it Catholic capitalism or even Gandhian capitalism. Whatever be the terminology, the business leaders will have to take cognizance of sustainability and inclusivity, the two key dimensions that drive business growth. Growth for all and growth for good would be the mantra for the new age leaders. Growth for all and growth for good. For the past 5 to 6 years at Organic, we have been silently working and doing extensive research on the models for growth for the 21st century businesses. Academicians and thought leaders have vetted our proprietary model, the sustainable business framework, and the brand purpose solutions. These models have undergone rigorous stages of conceptualization, endorsements, and market readiness. Our vision is to help clients to build sustainable businesses and purpose brands so that the world will be a better place to live. That means we need to evangelize and convince more business leaders to take this route for growth. On this anniversary day, I am so happy to announce that we are taking our first step by starting operations in Bangalore and Chennai today with our own offices. Also, we are taking our services to the Pacific Coast in the United States with a strategic alliance in Los Angeles. I wish Mr. Sarith, Mr. Vivek, and Ms. Tatiana Cannon all the very best. Let me end by reassuring this august audience of our commitment to building purposeful brands and sustainable organizations. It's a time for us to deliver on our motto of doing well by doing good. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our team is immensely blessed to have mentored by 74 leaders from different disciplines during the Mimamsa series in the past. It was Sri Venugopal C. Govind, respected management and financial consultant, and managing partner of Varma & Varma, who inaugurated the series years back. Today, as we are here for the 75th edition, I'm extremely happy and proud to invite Sri Venugopal C. Govind, who indeed does not need any introduction, for the felicitation.
Thank you, madam. Good evening to all of you. My esteemed friend, Sri Dilip Narayanan, distinguished Professor Biju Varkkey, all my very close friends I see on the screen, some of them, Madhav, Sri Biju Dominic, George Kora, Sarath Nair, and all of you, I extend my greetings to you. I should say it's an extremely beautiful, beautiful evening. What a wonderful day. So many achievements all together have been packed in a very single day. Great achievement indeed. Hats off to Dilip Narayanan for all his qualities of head and heart, excellent leadership, fine, humane attitudes, approach to life, definite objective, vision, mission, purpose, all combined, success does not come all that very easily. I would say that Dilip today is a shining model of how purposeful success has to be built up. It's a great day indeed, 22 years of very outstanding, rewarding, exceedingly successful journey for organic BPS. Soon, as I said, in 3 years now, from now, it will be silver jubilee, and then golden jubilee, then platinum, let it go higher and higher. And the organization should certainly reach out to global heights as you progress. And he's very well tuned towards that, I have no doubt about it. All factors have come quite very much in place to be hugely successful even in this competing world of business, finance, whatever it is. To talk about the Center for Purpose Business, fantastic idea. As Dilip Narayanan has brought it out, Center for Purpose Business. Actually, years ago, when I actually came for the inauguration, I was wondering, purpose business, okay, it has a meaning, no doubt about it, but he fine-tuned it to be Center for Higher Purpose Business, not to be, satisfied at just purpose. Now, higher purpose really makes us all think, and perhaps it is that driving ideology behind this movement that has saw in the culmination of so many successful programs having been held all through this short period of time, 2 years now. As he said, 74, you see, very leading dignitaries have been brought from various walks of life, fields of life, and they have interacted. When we talk about purpose, certainly it is not merely, we have heard, all of us know what is mission or a vision for an organization. Mission for an organization, we often say objectives or objects of a movement, an institution and all that. But the purpose is something more into that. Purpose-oriented, purpose-based, that must have been probably made him think about it. And business also today is largely adopting this concept of purpose branding, purpose marketing, purpose financing, purpose business itself. When we talk about business, as Dilip Narayanan has rightly brought out to what has been achieved all this time, when we talk about purpose in business, what do the nation has a purpose? Globe has a purpose. The world as a whole, when you look at the business, world as a whole has a purpose. Industry, that particular segment of industry has a purpose. Nations have a purpose. The industrial unit or industrial segment in you operate, whether marketing, advertisement, sales promotion, whichever, branding, in that part, that also has a purpose. Your own organization does have a purpose. Each of the CEO, from CEO downwards, each one has that purpose. Now, which purpose are we trying to achieve? One would say that you must have a purpose which must be close up to your passion, you achieve that. Every industry must have a purpose, something more than a philosophy, and you are trying to achieve that purpose. The industrial segment as a whole, it will have a purpose. The nation has a purpose. As he says, Atmanirbhar, all that, So within that, it has got to be compressed. And we have to probably marry all the concepts of our individual purpose, our industrial unit purpose, our segment purpose, our nation's purpose, the purpose of the humanity itself, serving mankind, as Dilip Narayanan has gone into Green Storm and all his various other related activities in the matter of environment and development, not satisfied with mere growth in his own industry, not merely multiplying his turnover or his bottom line or whatever it is, but reaching out to a much larger segment, reaching out to the global arena itself. So the purpose for him is very, very wide and very vast. It has been well defined. That is what I find. And that is why so many people have also been brought in to focus on what is relevant, most relevant, that each one of them in the organization, each one of his probably his customers, his associates in business, his partners, and everyone should know, so that there will be a cohesion, there will be a joint understanding of the very, very organizational philosophy, organizational objectives, organizational dimensions, the nature, character, and what altogether makes it into a purpose. So looking at the this concept from that view, I have no doubt about that. I think Dilip Narayanan has hugely succeeded in adding meaning, new meaning and new dimension to the orientation of the very purpose of his own business, his segment of his business, to the world of business and industry as a whole, to the nation, to the people around and all that. The contribution has been so very huge. I should say, beyond words. I must wholeheartedly congratulate Dilip Narayanan for the efforts that he has taken. I know so many of you have helped him in the process. All of you have seen Madhav and George Kora, and all of you have helped him in that process. And together you have achieved in giving a proper direction, and not only proper direction to his own business or his own objectives and activities, but perhaps for all good meaning, well-meaning people in business, in industry, in commerce, in finance, in the nation itself, who are looking at this kind of a model to emulate every segment of industry, every unit in industry, every business unit. If you look at that, if each one defines their purpose, the whole difficulty is to identify that purpose, the research into that purpose, and to define that purpose and to work on that purpose. I'm sure we have got such an eminent professor, Professor Biju Varkkey, who is going to elaborate on what are all the various dimensions, increasing dimensions of purpose-oriented business or purpose-based business or purpose business itself, and how businesses have to be tuned in there. He will explain, and we are all ears to him. But I'm sure that even without knowing about all those broader concepts, perhaps the in-depth meaning lying behind that, and the various technologies or techniques and methodologies and tools involved in attaining this kind of a higher purpose business, Dilip Narayanan has simply demonstrated is how, with a very objective mind, with a very focused mind, and with commitment to ideology, believing in what you do. That he has said, there's believers. The whole objective is to identify a set of believers, creating that belief about yourself, belief about your organization, belief about people who are working with you, belief on the resources that you have, belief on the ability to turn the resources into huge success when it comes to actual results and all that. It is the belief that drives, that motivates, that inspires, that triggers. You see the underlying higher purpose as he has set in mind, and he has achieved tremendous amount of success. And I have no doubt about it. Organization, organic BPS will have a long way to go. It will multiply in its success in its business. And what he has now tried to achieve is not confined to his own organization, but to reaching out to the whole society around, to the community around, to the industry and business world around. I'm sure the purpose that he has in mind in setting up units like this or starting ventures like this as Organic BPS, as Center for High Purpose Business, as Greenstorm Foundation and all that, all together, and many more perhaps to follow. We do not know what all ideas are in his mind. The combination, the harmonious blend of his very advanced intellect and his keen sense of observations manifested in the qualities of his mind, and his brilliance and all put together will certainly take him to great heights in the years to come. I wish his organization, Organic BPS, all success, continuing success, God's blessings all the time. And to him, Dilip Narayanan, also remain a leader all the time, a purposeful leader, as you have demonstrated already for many decades to come. Let many leaders follow the path that you are setting, and you still have many heights to go as you have years with you. God be with you in your journey all the time. I wish the organization, I wish the Center for Higher Purpose Business, and I wish the whole movement itself great success. God bless. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Let's watch a quick video on organic BPS.
Restart game, restart India.
Women be the change.
time has come for the most awaited program of the evening, the keynote address. Soon after the keynote, there will be an interactive session with our chief guest. Let me now give you a brief introduction about the man of the hour, Professor Biju Varkkey. A renowned scholar, he is now a full-time faculty with the Human Resource Management area at IIM. He has done his master's in PMIR from MGU and is a fellow of NIBM Pune. Having had years of experience working with the government and non-government organizations on numerous research and consulting assignments, Professor Biju Varkkey has also shown academic interest in SHRO, internal talent and leadership development, organization design and transformation, purpose and faith-based organizations, etc. He is serving as a board member for many listed companies and startups, and is also a member of committees, panels, and task forces constituted by various government bodies and banking institutions. I welcome you, sir, for the keynote address on the topic Aligning Talent with the Purpose.
Thank you. So great to to be with this group and for hearing for hearing some of the good words, because I think when you say renowned scholar, etc., I'm not sure whether I'm a scholar at all. Okay. So in fact, I would. It's also nice that I meet people like what you call Mr. Venugopal C, Govind, etc. I remember while I was just passing out along with one of my friends. So later, I think article with you, Girish from Bharat Mata, I dropped into your office and then I saw the Income Tax Act, which was on your table, and I got scared because somebody told me that, you can become a chartered accountant and that's a good this thing for you. But then when I saw this one book, I got scared. And then, of course, quite a few people whom I actually see are familiar faces. Okay, many times before. I had seen them with, much of their young avatars. And I also feel that, I think some of the people like my good friend Nainan, he is not opening his camera because he doesn't possibly want people to see whether he has aged. And I also now feel that I have also aged a lot. So it's nice to be here and among the illustrious company of people who are doing really great and to talk about purpose-based firms and talent management. Okay, and let me also first actually tell you that, look, I am not a great speaker. I am fundamentally a teacher. Okay, so I rather, I teach well, but I don't speak. I'm very bad at public speaking. So that's the first thing.
Dilip, is Professor Biju's camera, is it off? I don't see his.
I have two. I have two. One on which I want to use for presentation.
Okay, all right. So thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to use that for. Okay, let me put it up. Okay, aligning talent with the purpose. Okay, so what happens is that at the end of it, if you really look at the word purpose is, let me first come and tell you that when I was looking at the extant literature, is also a much used and abused word. Okay, so if you really say that, look, what is the purpose? That anything, any organization, anything which you set up has in a way as a purpose. Okay, has some sort of a purpose. But what defines the purpose which we talk about or which is being talked about now from maybe an ordinary definition of purpose? And that is where you will find that words which are used also becomes higher purpose form. Okay, this has a purpose which possibly is much different from others. Okay, and the next one, or different from others, which has possibly a larger impact. That's where I read recently one paper on which I have used to make some part of the presentation, but talked about positive impact form. Okay, our organizations which actually make positive impact. And very interestingly, what a classical conception of this positive impact making firm was that it's only, maybe it was restricted to non-profit companies. Okay, like if you need to be an NGO, you need to be a non-profit company to make maybe that sort of a positive impact. And that is where one of the things, and many of those organizations which actually make what you call our purpose driven or work for a higher purpose do sacrifice on their profits. That was a, that was a fundamental very belief with which it was driven. But now there is a lot of thinking that if you are around for a for-profit organization also, you just have a purpose. Okay, then how do you actually define purpose? Purpose depends on, it varies from organization to organization. That's one of the first characteristics of the higher order purpose. Okay, or the purpose in generic is that every organization has something which may be a statement, which may be an expression, which captures the essence of its existence. Okay, which captures the essence of the experience, and that essence of the its existence is explained. In fact, the movie which we saw, or the audiovisual which we saw, is some organization's explanation of what they stand for. What they stand for, and how do they plan to impact the stakeholders. That is what distinguishes maybe from a negative impact or a zero impact organization or a negative impact organization from a positive impact organization. That I do stand up for something and I have certain intentions which stand up for something. So it's a communication of that intentions, and I think a purpose branding firm is doing nothing but helping organizations to communicate it better. Okay, with the outside world. But equally important is communicating it with the inside world. Okay, that's your own employees. Your own employees, and that's actually an interesting area to study. Okay, generically or academically, we classify purpose-based organizations into two. Okay, very simple two purpose-based organizations. One is actually a goal-based purpose organization, which is a goal-based organization, and the second one is called duty-based organization. Goal is something, a goal-based organization is something which actually the organization sets its goals. And that's what Mr. Govind was talking about, the vision and the mission of the organization, which is actually set by its leadership. That is why leaders, founding principles, etc., becomes very, very important, is because they set the goals. They set the intentions. When the, what you call the tagline, which BPS Organics says, doing well by doing good, it's by a leader. It's a thought process which actually says that yes, we will do well, and the route to do well is do good. Or one company with which I am extremely proud of being associated, the Aster DM Healthcare, which fundamentally says that we will treat you well. Okay, so which actually talks about the treatment of it. And the way we'll treat you well, which is actually, we focus on treating you well, and the well, that word well is defined in terms of respect, dignity, etc. So there is a very, very goal-based thing which I have expressed. And I have the freedom as a founder to actually express my goals as it is. Sometimes you're not very clear about the goals, goals evolve, or you have goals, or you set goals which you cannot talk about it. Okay, then you actually get to know what is now the what you call flavor of the season, which is possibly called purpose washing. Okay, that's one. The goal-based one. There where you have your vision, your mission becomes extremely important. Then you get into slightly more operational issues, which is more imposed upon you, which is called the duty-based purpose. Okay, which is different from the goal-based purpose. Is the duty-based purpose is the duty, which actually means that you are bound to do it from an ethical, regulatory, and moral stand. Okay, you're bound to do it from an ethical, moral, and moral stand. That's where you talk about, whatever. And now a good purpose-based organization actually builds both, because it's the duty-based part of it which focuses on the execution side. Okay, where you talk about the strategic intent, the culture, the processes, the type of people you have, the orientation of the people, etc., becomes very, very important from the duty-based purposes. Now, you create a duty-based purpose or you create a purpose-based organization, there are opportunities and challenges facing it. This is from what you call as from a very recent journal, which has actually 2021, which has slowly come out. I think it's a July-August article, okay, which is possibly focused on corporate reputation review, okay, because purpose, positive higher order purpose as a positive reputation effect. Okay, so you have both opportunities confronting them or opportunities before them and the potential challenges before them. Okay, it's not that like any other organization, anything about it is that a purpose-driven organization also has very specific challenges associated with chasing the purpose. Okay, any normal organization, okay, or any organization will have challenges, but in what we call as the purpose-led companies, okay, it depends on, the terminologies are very different because people use it, or I prefer using actually the positive impact organization as the word. That is the most, what you call term, which I actually a positive, because in the process of chasing a positive impact, okay, they have certain opportunities. It starts with higher financial success. Okay, that purpose actually helps you to financially be successful. And if you don't have a financial success, then possibly your existence will also be questioned. In fact, this whole debate about in ESG, we will actually say that, okay, in future, people may not ask about profits and profitability, rather they will ask about ESG compliance and contribution which you make in the audit bet. It actually means that profit or making profit is something that you are expected to do. You exist because you make profit. Okay, and there is nothing like you have a second question on that. Okay, then the second one is the higher employee motivation. People love working in such purpose-based organization. Otherwise, if you look at many studies which have come about the new generation employees, etc., they really talk about they feel motivated that, look, my organization is not run of the mill. It has certain uniqueness. That is the old concept of employer branding. Okay, so I do work in an organization which is slightly different, which makes certain, and then otherwise this also, and this provides a lot of motivation. Having, worked in certain organizations, I know about that there are certain organizations which may not be the best paymasters, but the type of work which they do, people actually working there actually feel motivated to work. And this is very, very carefully, what you call, designed. And that is where talent management comes, is that if the talent needs to be motivated, you go through this whole process about talent. And that is where you talk about entrepreneurial mindset, talent actually coming in purpose-based organization. Incidentally, along with me, I have also asked one of my students who is doing in a final year of PhD, Ekta, she's also there present with us in the talk. Her doctoral work is actually on entrepreneurial competencies. Okay, you're looking at what sort of competencies will actually small entrepreneurs do develop, and at some stage, maybe we will reach out to some of you, and I'm also in her doctoral advisor committee. We will also reach out to you to explore the entrepreneurial competencies and where purpose becomes actually one of the stuff. So I just wanted to actually mention. It also has a very, very positive labor market signaling event, higher attractiveness for applicants, that people would in a way love to work in organizations which possibly serve a positive purpose. Okay, and now what is the positive purpose when we actually start looking at from a what you call as maybe a best person to actually look at some of these millennials and the new generations, what you call in the brains or the mind will be Biju Dominic, whose company works in an area of what you call neurosciences, which typically talks about, possibly what do these people look for. And some of our young students with whom we really work for have very, very different ways of looking at, or with whom we interact at very, very different ways of actually looking at maybe companies they would really work for. And of course, the higher company loyalty that look, I would actually be spending my hard-earned money on company which really serves the process. Okay, so these are some of those opportunities which are, of course, it has its own financial, it has its own negative, what you call as potential challenges. The first one is that it possibly might really conflict with certain financial goals. I may have to make choices. Okay, and certain very, very purely financial oriented investors would actually say that you are wasting time on it. And it's not that all your employees would be aligned with possibly your purpose. We worked with in the construction industry many years before, while I was a student in IIM Pune, we were introduced to a construction of a company from from Chennai. I forgot that company's name, which which believed in certain again a purpose was formed in terms of orienting to customers because of certain things. That was something which even I think got covered in a lot of newspapers, etc. At that point of time, because of certain regulatory issues, they could not really get commission of the building permission, and the whole thing was delayed by 12 months, and they paid interest to the people, to the customers for all the entire period they were not handed, because the stand was that we made a promise, we could not follow the promise, and then we are compensating you with that. That was one very, very interesting, the purpose around it. It had a lot of challenges that, some of the employees over there really found that, you are actually throwing away money to the people, to the customers, etc. Okay, so you sometimes would have that, not all your employees would really align to all this. So talent management becomes the fact is that how do you handle some of these? And of course, there are contradictory stakeholder requirements where people would, and that's the the potential challenges of a purpose-led firm. It's not that they have positives and they have actually negative side of it. It has its own challenges to face. So it's not a real rosy picture. And this is something which I wanted to look at it. It says that in the old thing of shift from to a purpose-based firm, or what really happens is that it's really a shift to a path of interconnectedness. Okay, from a differential, in fact, what differentiates, that's where what the big debate, the big divide of the purpose-based companies or positive impact companies from the rest of it is that maybe you have an old set of a traditional mindset which looks at that I and we, which is a zero-sum mindset. Okay, that look, I exist for me, myself and maybe some of the people who are closely connected to me and my horizons, my perspective does not really move into it. Okay, I move it from, if you look into the business purpose, okay, or which is the, what you call the x-axis. Yes, I move from profit maximization to a social responsibility, to a next level of collective flourishing. In fact, Biju's talk, Dilip's talk and even Mr. Venugopal's talk were really talking about that collective flourishing, which is actually existence of a mindset or existence of the belief that all of us went together. And very interestingly, that's what Mahatma Gandhi talked about. So there is a connect between what you're talking about, this old Gandhian. In fact, in our classes next 2 weeks later, I have in my doctoral PhD level course, one of the things which we actually deal with it is that is Gandhianism relevant now? Okay, so but when the world is really moving into more purpose-oriented and more old unitary way of looking at it, in fact, that is asked, and there is an increasing dialogue or a discourse in that level. Okay, where what you call organizations are talking about collective flourishing, and at a very interesting thing is that how do I organize myself? At the profit maximization level, I organize it for extreme efficiency. So I ensure that my engine is extremely well oiled. So I talk about high performance workplaces. I talk about star employees, okay, pay for performance architectures, everything looking into efficiency. At a social responsibility level, I slightly move into the next level of talking about effectiveness. Okay, so I talk about, a slightly different level, and from there, you're really talking about caring and oldness. So do you appreciate the differences? Do you appreciate that? That's where, that's the shift, the purpose-based or the positive impact firms are going to, what you call talking about or do expect it. But now the journey is not very easy again. Okay, let me now, in the interest of time, for talent management, okay, it really happens from the positive and the negative for the organization. But for the individuals, what does it do? There are opportunities and there are also risks associated. One of my areas of work currently is actually the dark side, okay, or what you call as counterproductive work behaviors. And then we talked about leadership derailment. Okay, my interest is there are leaders who are taught and they become successful, but there are leaders who actually get derailed and nobody talks about it. So one of my areas of work is actually to look at derailment and what are the drivers of derailment and how much can we work on rebounding, talent rebounding. So because talent if you have to learn, I strongly believe that talent has to fail. And particularly in purpose-based organization, failure becomes and experimentation becomes the second. So one of those first things which you talk about is that, yes, working in a purpose-based organization definitely boosts self-esteem. People feel actually proud about it. People feel good about it. And also what happens is because what the organization does helps people to make good about themselves. And then they also expect reciprocal, etc. Because since they do good, they also expect the organization to be good to them. So, and these are the two major problems, but there are quite a few of the dark side issues of it. Purpose of the organization versus purpose of do they align or unify? Currently, in fact, a lot of literature, a lot of people actually talking about aligning is maybe a temporary adjustment. But it's more you are really talking about purpose of the organization where the people really buy into the purpose. Okay, they buy into the purpose, they live the purpose. Or that in branding, I think I'm not a marketing expert, but I know the branding gurus here really can talk about by telling I live the brand. Okay, I live the brand and I live the brand promise. Purpose provides motivation. It gives the willingness to work more. People do get absorbed and deep involved in this activity. But in the process, do they develop blinders? Because then you have what they call work intensification and the quality of work life. One of those things is that when you're really aligned to the purpose, you really get absorbed of it. And that is where, I have this whole issue into what in many organizations, I have a conceptual issue. In fact, there was a PhD thesis where one of the students whom I guided, which you are coming up telling is that, engagement, okay, employee engagement in the current sense, which you are talking about, is actually a surrogate or something which has been what you call, unfortunately, promotes workaholism. Because it says is that they are really absorbed into it, they are deep into it, which in a way, which actually means that it's workaholic, and certain activities get normalized in that process, that work-life balance. No, I'm so absorbed into it that, no, I don't have time for work-life balance. Self-care gets into what you call casualty to it. And these are all normalized by tech, and that is definitely, in my opinion, that's my very personal opinion, that might be a type of purpose washing. You are using purpose for control. Okay, and many times the top driven is the purpose. But then what about employee perceptions? How do the employees experience and the lens, how do they make sense out of it? Okay, what you could do to really get sense out of it. And many times, I'm sure the internal employee communications, when you do certain studies, you actually say is that the employees possibly not perceive it. And that's a huge risk, which actually comes in the terms of talent. Now, in a purpose firm, how do you shape employees? How do you shape employees? How do you shape their outlook? And how much do you allow employees to shape the current and the future of purpose-driven organizations? Because since it is top-driven and founder-driven, many times what happens is that employee voice becomes a casualty. And of course, there is always a winner's curse. I'm sure some of the successful people sitting in this August audience know that when you're at the top, there is always a stress of higher status. So I almost say always, I tell in IIM that, look, I am not a hot shot. I am not a hot shot star faculty. So I have all the more less stress. Okay, when you are, so sometimes the purpose-based organizations it becomes a criticism because you might be a victim of invisible criticism. Okay, so these are the simple issues which I wanted to bring in. I think we have already covered the allocated time. So let me stop here. And if there are any questions, observations, we can actually take that.
Professor Biju, the question is regarding retention of employees and purpose-driven companies. Do you see a correlation which is possibly better than maybe a companies that are not purpose-driven? Do you see such correlations?
Look, at least some US studies actually show that. Okay, US studies actually shows that there is a certain thing. But if you really look at some of the organizations, this is where from a qualitative case study based, this thing is because fundamentally I am more what you call as a qualitative researcher, and my approach is more qualitative and inductive rather than deductive approach. I'm more inductive, so I fly the kite. But if you really look at organizations which possibly have some anchored values, okay, anchored values, which are close to what you call as your employees' anchored values, I think the long stay of employees are higher. Okay, long stay of employees are higher. So in purposes, sometimes if you take people who get motivated by purpose, okay, there is a high chance that people would stay. But the counter to it is the risk is that the counter expectation. So they call out, okay, so the voice behavior, they call out purpose washing. So they don't tolerate hypocrisy. Okay, so I'm sure there would be other explanations to that. So the calling out behavior in purpose companies have a problem. And that is the challenge which many organizations face. The founder has defined a purpose, okay, but the employee voice gets suppressed. So that is where you're using it for as a control mechanism. Okay, and I work with some very beautiful companies in Surat in the diamond sector. They face this issue, that the employee voice gets suppressed. So the suggestion box was actually moved into the toilet. Okay, and then people also say that, look, the old man does not know what you call English. If we write in English, somebody would have to translate it. Okay, so there is an issue, but the fact is that the expressed purpose of it is that, okay, this is what we do. And the next one is the most important. What is the consequence or the burden I will bear if I am fined violating? So the expectation on the person who is violating is higher, or expectation of what you call as trust rebuilding. Retribution is extremely high on these organizations when they stand up and actually say that we are taking a purpose-based approach. So for example, this diamond company, there's one of the things in the purpose which they actually say is that if we are found trading in any fake diamond, it's not only that we will reimburse you, we will exit this business forever. Which means that you need to have internal control systems which actually says that every diamond which goes out of my factory is authentically certified. And there is a cost involved in it. So instead of possibly a random sampling process, which is statistically very valid, I have a universal sampling process, and it is very, very tough to do it, is because my effort, energy, cost is going up, because instead of doing it with one person, I am putting in 10. That is my human capital investment. And I need to really maintain that. And we have actually found in the very, very interesting things which you would really find in terms of what are the what they call what the purpose drives the purpose and how that purpose gets. Yeah.
I just had a thought about pushing Biju's question forward to take the debate a little forward. The question he raised was employee retention and the importance of purpose. Suppose we looked at it from a slightly different way. What is the relationship between attrition and purpose clarity? For example, if you plot attrition on the and purpose clarity or clarity of purpose on X and Y axis, would you get a downward sloping curve?
I don't know. You can get, you may not get. Okay, we have a what you call as so somewhere down the line, I also sometimes I tell organizations that look, attrition sometimes is also a selfish intention of organization. Look, if attrition is the rule of the game, design your organization for attrition.
Yeah, this was the old GE technique, where you have a bell curve and you snip off both edges.
And then let me also tell you, a couple of years later, I found that one of the leaders of GE visited IIMA, and people asked this question: is that what happens? Is that he actually, with folded hands said, is that yes, we know we messed up. We not only messed up ourselves, we messed up old set of organization using the beautiful bell curve. In fact, I have a paper on which is called belling the bell curve. You create a bell curve, and finally you have to create systems to get out of the bell curve. Okay, so at least in some of the companies, so including GE, went out of bell curve because they say that bell curve fundamentally is communication of mistrust. At the center of it, who knows you best? It's your supervisor. Okay, now when I put in a bell curve, I am actually telling the supervisor, I don't trust you, I will trust a mathematical equation. So the supervisor is also smart. The supervisor understands the mathematical equation and plays the mathematical equation. So what they actually did, some of the, including these are Indian companies, which actually did it is that they come back and said that I got a distribution which is almost similar to the bell curve. Without insisting that bell curve, I got it. So what happens is a very different, he's empowering the supervisor to make a decision. Rather than putting in a tool to, then you become a victim of the tool. And in purpose-based organizations, etc., one care, in my opinion, is that you should not actually become a victim of the tool. That is something, that is the stress which comes. Okay, and whether the organization also has the power to say no. And in the process, I may close window to certain opportunities. For example, Reliance Retail is known that it has closed opportunities to one segment of products. It's a very bold decision which was actually taken, maybe because of the size, etc. They can afford it, but I'm sure purpose-based organizations do take an option that, okay, I may close opportunities to certain, it's not actually blocking the market. It is about closing some ways of approaching the market. Okay, so that's what purpose-based organizations, because I find a lot of meaning in it. Okay, a lot of meaning in it, but it's not an easy game to, easy to do it. It needs to really get into the organization, and people need to get, buy in. They need to really, your employees really need to buy in and live the purpose.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you to all of you. Moving forward, I now invite our advisory board member and mentor, Sri V.K. Madhumohan, who has always pushed us to be a learning organization, for the closing remarks.
Thank you, Anne, and thank you, Dilip. This discussion is a very timely and appropriate one, because today purpose sits at the intersection between the tactical and strategic aspects of business. Virtually for every organization, purpose has now become the fulcrum around which its own existence depends. Just this morning, there was a fascinating discussion which I heard, which further reinforces my belief that purpose has become at the center of business. The world's largest fashion brand, most powerful brand, Zara, which is owned by the Spanish company called Inditex, has just announced that the founder's daughter, who's 37 years old, is going to step in and become the chairman. And the founder, who's 85 years old, has stepped aside to make way for his daughter. And this has sparked a global debate on whether dynasties can impose their offspring on a global business brand, firstly. And secondly, whether such powerful brands should continue to buy cotton from Xinjiang, which is worked upon by the repressed Uyghur population. What is the purpose, therefore, of brands like this if they, in the pursuit of profitability, take advantage of low costs from depressed populations or suppressed populations? So this is a global debate that is raging. And so it was very fascinating to see Professor Biju Varkkey sketch a very lucid conceptual framework around this whole purpose debate. While I can't, go into every little detail that he talked about as part of my summary, I would like to pick out a few of those concepts that he sketched, which have stayed in my mind and which I think are important. Professor Varkkey said, purpose could indicate what we stand for as an organization. So what we stand for, by definition, I think, points to higher purpose. And the minute we say higher purpose, we transcend from the temporal to the spiritual, which in fact was what Gandhiji was indicating. So the minute we say higher purpose defines what we stand for, we make that long, tough, arduous trek from the temporal to the spiritual, firstly. Secondly, Professor Varkkey talked about two kinds of purpose organizations. One is goal-based and the other is duty-based. And in goal-based purpose organizations, the goal is set by somebody and the rest of the organization follows suit. Whereas in, it's the other way around. In goal-based purpose organizations, the goal is set by the organization itself, and then it aligns all the resources, land, labor, capital organization towards achieving those goals. But in duty-based organization, the duties are set by some external entity and the organization has to deliver. I think the armed forces come to mind when it comes to duty-based organizations. They have a duty, which is the citizenry's need for security, and they follow that. So that I thought was a very interesting categorization of purpose organizations. But what really got me interested was that framework, that graphic Professor Varkkey showed about how organizations are moving from a zero-sum game to interconnectedness. Zero sum, of course, those of us who have been reading and involved in this whole area for many years know that one person's gain is the other person's loss. And that today, as Professor Varkkey pointed out, is moving towards interconnectedness. And that I thought was a very important point. So it's not just win-win, as the cliche goes in corporate circles. It's not just win-win, it's interconnectedness. And this is a paradigm shift in management thinking, I think. This ought to be a paradigm shift in the thinking of CEOs and boards. classic example is the entire COVID vaccination scenario. Today, this morning's news reviews point to the fact that only 7% of Africans are vaccinated, whereas the figure is 95% in New Zealand and very high percentages in the rest of the quote developed world. Now, many of these rich countries are sitting on millions and millions of doses of vaccination surplus, and they are not sending it over to Africa. So the debate there is, this COVID crisis ought to have brought in vaccine equity, because if one person is unsafe, the rest of us are unsafe. And I think that is the fundamental premise of interconnectedness. We have to understand that it's not one person's gain being the other person's loss. The tide lifts all boats, and therefore we are connected with each other's welfare. And if we are focused on the other person's welfare, in it lies our own welfare, which I think is the principle behind interconnectedness. And it's a far more substantive construct than just win-win. I can't resist throwing an equation at Professor Biju Varkkey and my very dear friend Biju Dominic. Maybe this equation will give the basis for some further discussion, research, etc. From my experience, I believe that POA not equal to L. In other words, POA stands for position of authority is not equal to leadership. And the fundamental challenge facing organizations today is there are people sitting in positions of authority who are not leaders. So therefore, merely sitting in a position of authority doesn't make you a leader. And that has intimate connection with purpose. Then Professor Varkkey talked about something that is so critically important, namely, how does an organization approach, quote, failure? Because all the incentivization is towards, quote, success. So the minute you say success, you're eliminating experimentation, A/B testing, trials. You're eliminating the even possibility of making errors, in which case, how do you learn? So that's a very big question that Professor Varkkey raised. And for HR practitioners, that ought to be a very, very important consideration, particularly in line of aligning talent with purpose. We've got to create a culture where success and failures, I think it was Winston Churchill who said, are those two imposters. We need to approach the whole scenario of trial and experimentation and move away from the dichotomy of success and failure if organizations are to go forward. And then, of course, he talked about purpose washing. So is purpose actually a very sexy term for introducing control by other means? I suspect that in many organizations that is true. And then, of course, connecting that to what Biju raised, attrition. So purpose and attrition are connected. Employee engagement is a term that is used very often to reduce attrition, but it's woefully lacking because it doesn't have substance. It's just cosmetic stuff. If there is a problem, do some employee engagement. But the problem, it is a case of treating the wrong disease. And most of the time, the disease is actually failure of leadership arising from lack of clarity of purpose and a complete lack of character at the very top. So, summing up, I think companies need to understand, from what Professor Biju Varkkey so lucidly pointed out, that there has to be a thinking approach that carries everybody together and helps people align their own personal purpose with an organization's purpose. And if that alignment leaves gaps, then two things can happen. One, the organization can suboptimize and become less sustainable. And two, the individual working in such an organization will feel disconnected and therefore prone to resignation, which therefore imposes costs on the organization. So the minute we talk about all these things, we'll have to come back to the origin of Mimamsa, which Dilip very perceptively described the label of this entire thought leadership program as Mimamsa. In Sanskrit, Mimamsa means critical review, introspection. And Mimamsa is a fundamental aspect of Vedanta. And it has to also do with that part of the Vedas which deal with karma. It's in fact called Karma Kanda. So Karma Kanda and Mimamsa are all Vedantic and Vedic concepts which point to the necessity or to the importance of dharma. And it's very interesting. The circle is full because Kautilya said, Sukhasya moolam dharma, dharmasya moolam artha, arthasya moolam rajyam, rajyasya moolam indriya nigram, which means balance and equipoise is what creates enterprise and sustainability. So I think in this whole journey, what stands out is organizational sustainability is connected to purpose, and an individual's equipoise and evolution is also connected to understanding the purpose of his life, which is namely spiritual emancipation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I welcome Beena Mithun, General Manager of Organic PPS, for proposing the vote. Thanks.
Keynote speaker, Professor Biju Varkkey, and invited guest, good evening. It is a great privilege to propose the vote of thanks to the distinguished guests present here today. Let me extend our deep sense of gratitude to Professor Biju Varkkey. Sir, we could learn a lot about aligning people with purpose. Thank you so much. We hope that we can collaborate further on our mission to develop purposeful organizations. I am so happy to see Mr. Venugopal C. Govind and Mr. Madhav Mohan gracing the occasion and sharing valuable insights. We are thankful for your love and affection for the entire organic team. I would like to thank all our clients, guests, and colleagues for being such a wonderful audience. I thank Ms. Anne George for beautifully coordinating the event. Finally, let me recount my gratitude to Mr. Dilip Narayanan for giving us this wonderful opportunity to be part of a learning organization. Thank you all and have a great evening.